Welcome everybody to another live stream. Today we've got a really interesting one. It's kind of a meta live stream. I'm going to have our guest, Randall Jacobs. He's been on the channel before, and he's actually going to be recording his podcast on this live stream. I thought I would double up the content, and you can see how the sausage is made. So welcome to the show, Randall Jacobs.
Hey, Russ.
Yay!
Good to see you. Glad we're finally getting to do this together. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Randall is the founder of Thesis Bikes. He's the co-host of the Gravel Ride podcast, which we're recording today, as well as the co-founder of the ridership community. I think people know what a podcast is. You know what Thesis Bikes is. Can you talk about the ridership first, and then we'll do the podcast part?
Sure. The ridership actually emerged initially as on our side a Slack community that we started for thesis riders, and then on the other side the Facebook group that Craig had started for the podcast. So Craig Dalton is the founder of the Gravel Ride podcast, the primary host. He has graciously invited me to be his sidekick and occasional content creating partner. And so it's, we're at about 1,500 or so people, really lively and very helpful sorts of communication. So it's kind of a community of riders helping riders.
Right.
And the dynamics that we see in there is something that, we're quite proud of.
Yeah, community is like a huge thing, especially now when a lot of us feel so disconnected with the COVIDs. And you said it's a Facebook group and a Slack channel. Is that right?
So it started as those two things,
okay.
And then we merged them into a single Slack group called the Ridership.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if you guys are interested in checking out the ridership, I will put links in the description below after the live stream.
Yeah, theridership.com is a link where you can go to get an invite if you like.
Yeah, cool. We've got 40 people in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Didn't expect so many, frankly, mid-morning on a Monday. Again, this was totally last minute. Randall asked me to be on the podcast. I thought it'd be fun to show you guys how the sausage is made. So if anyone has any quick questions for Randall, leave those in the comments. Otherwise, we'll start. I will hand over the reins to Randall, and he will steer the ship for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Let's
All
see.
right. Shall we dive right in, or you're gonna do some questions here?
Questions, no questions. But if you guys are tuning in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. So here's a fan. Craig Dalton's gravel ride videos are awesome. I'm assuming it's the same. I'm assuming that's the same Craig.
Yes. Yeah. He's made a few with other content creators in the space.
Nice.
And they Gravel Bike California.
Oh yeah, that's a great. I've been enjoying them and taking notes because we're about to do a road trip down to California, Arizona, and definitely want to take off some of those rides. Cool. We've got someone from Austria, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Redmond, Oregon. Nice. Okay, so lots of people. Well, I think I'm ready to hand over the reins. How do you're going to do your intro, or you said you're going to put that on later?
So I'll put my intro for the podcast into the audio file after we have our conversation. And so what I'd like to do is, first off, I want to thank everyone who joined us at the last moment. It's quite an honor that people are so interested in participating in this conversation that they'd show up, especially on such short notice. So thank you for that. And let's the structure of this, I'd like to be kind of the first part of it, really focusing on hearing your story. Like I'm really, and I know that a lot of your listeners and our listeners are probably quite interested to hear about, where are you from? What's your background? How did bikes come to play such a significant role in your life? So let's start with that.
Okay. Have we begun?
We have begun.
Okay. Well, quick background. I feel like my journey into bicycling is a little bit different than what's typically represented in bike media. I didn't discover the sports side of cycling for a very long time. My basic origin story is I was very unhealthy, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, eating hot dogs, and I knew that I needed a life change. And then my truck died. And that, I'm super lazy at the time. This is post-college, just graduated from UCLA. So I started walking, taking the bus, taking transit, then discovered skating, and then finally the bicycle, because it was way more efficient than a pair of inline skates while carrying gear. So from very early on, I think my genesis in cycling was very transportation and utility focused.
Mhm.
And a couple years later, discovered bike touring, which is kind of like commuting with all the things. And that's when Pathless Pedal, the website started. This is back in 2009. And we did our travels, traveled for about 3 years, mostly on the road. We spent some winters in Portland. And after that, after we stopped actively traveling, kind of pivoted towards bicycle tourism. So working with tourism, with destination marketing organizations to promote cycling. And it was also around that time that I started experimenting more with YouTube. I saw it as a really viable medium to kind of communicate, messages and information that just, a blog post couldn't do. So that's like 15 years in a nutshell.
Well, and I'm curious to tease out a little bit more about like those early days. Like, was there some intentionality around like getting healthier, or was it strictly like I needed a means to get around after my truck died, and it became something more?
It was primarily like a means to get around. I do remember having one moment where I have a very obsessive personality. So when I get into something, I really get into something. So I borrowed a neighbor's bike, and I think I'm biking up and down the beach path in Long Beach all day. And at the end of the day, I was like hawking up like half a jar of phlegm, and that's when there's like, oh, this could be healthy too. But it's primarily because it was fun. I always try to follow my folly. Do things while they're fun.
Yeah. You and I have that element of a pattern of obsessiveness on a certain thing. Definitely have that in common. So resonate with you there very much. And so you grew up around LA?
Yeah. So I was born in the Philippines. We immigrated here when I was really young. So for the most part, grew up in Southern California, like Glendale, Burbank. Went to high school in UCLA. And after that, lived in Long Beach for a span of time, traveled, lived in Portland for a span of time, and now we're here in Missoula, Montana.
Very, very cool. Do you speak Tagalog, perchance?
I can understand it fluently, but I can't speak it fluently anymore.
Yeah, no, well, that's cool. It's so let's see. So bikes like now are how you make your living. And you mentioned a little bit about how like the genesis of PLP. Share a bit more about that, and like what was the inspiration? Like why and what were your hopes for it at the time, and how did it come to be?
Right. Back when we got into bike touring, there was very few resources. There was a text-based website like Crazy Guy on the Bike. There's bikeforums.net. Things like bikepacking.com didn't exist. The Radavist didn't exist. I think he may have existed as probably not probably, but there's very few resources. So it's not like the Instagram rich landscape of bike touring today. So what few resources we did see like inspired us to go out. At the time I was a working photographer in Long Beach. I was doing magazine shoots, food and portrait. And I had this very romantic notion of, we'll just travel the world on bike, and I will book photo shoots wherever we land, and we will travel endlessly that way. That was a grand vision. Didn't quite turn out as planned. Probably a big part is, people aren't necessarily going to be willing to hire hobo-looking people on bikes and paying thousands of dollars for a photo shoot, turns out. But that was a big dream initially. That didn't work out, so we had to find different ways to make a living and keep the dream happening. But that was the early dream.
So there's a theme that I hear there, which is common amongst a lot of entrepreneurial / creative types, which is looking to solve a problem that they themselves had, and thus being able to kind of resonate with that experience of like, how do I get into this and so on. For me, like the ridership was very much that. Now, granted, by the time the ridership came around, like I had a certain degree of expertise with bike. but there wasn't, beyond the podcast, there wasn't really a vehicle for sharing that. And then also, for me personally, like I wanted a different form of digital community, and I wanted a way to like coordinate group rides and events and things like that. And so like similar sorts of inspiration. So that's a cool element of kind of how what you do came about.
Mm-hmm.
Now tell me about like, so you're now doing this full time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is your job. This is your primary income.
It's a job.
Yeah. And how long has that been?
I have been a full-time YouTuber. Sounds like so like teeny bopper, right? Content creator, content entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I would consider since we landed in Missoula, and a lot of it was, my hand was kind of forced. Like we moved to Missoula because we were, super broke in Portland. Laura got a job at Adventure Cycling, and that was finally a stable income for a while. So we moved here, and I thought, all our expertise and all the work that we'd done with Travel Oregon would translate to Montana State Tourism and the local DMOs, and I could get, production work that way. Did not turn out. It did not turn out like that. So I buckled down, and, I was like, okay, I have to make this YouTube thing work, because, Missoula, Montana, they don't spend the funds like they do like in Portland or Oregon for kind of production. It's very small cities, small funds, small talent pool, and they tend to only hire people that they know. And as complete outsiders, I was not getting any work. So that's when I really buckled down, and it was pretty lean. We relied heavily on Laura's income at Adventure Cycling for me to follow this dream. And it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years later that it could support me, and now it's supporting both of us.
So she was bringing in those big bicycle industry journalist dollars,
right,
to support the thing. And if you don't mind sharing, like how do the economics work? Like how much, what percentage of it is YouTube? What percentage of it is your Patreon? I know you have a really strong and supportive following with Patreon.
Yeah, I can tell you very little bit is from YouTube AdSense.
Yeah.
But as a creator, that's where that's probably the lowest hanging fruit, because after I think 10,000 or 1,000 subscribers, you can monetize all that stuff. But that is not the dream to chase there, because it pays very little. Like to this day, I mean, I think the channel is at 120 something subscribers. If you work
120,000.
Yeah, 120,000 subscribers. If you work at In-N-Out 40 hours a week, you are making more than I do in AdSense. Just to put that in perspective. So there was a really make or break moment a couple years ago where I was putting out 4, sometimes 5 videos a week, just trying to generate AdSense, and I was on the verge of giving up. I had a couple of friends say, hey, you should try Patreon. You should try Patreon. And I was like, oh, I don't, I'm already making 5 videos. I don't have time to manage another community. But then I was like, okay, we have to do it, because it's not working financially. And people showed up. First it was a lot of people that we knew. And then it became lots of people that we didn't know, which was pretty cool. And so that started to give us, like, on top of Laura's income, another kind of pool of cash that we could count on every month. So that slowly grew. And then ultimately we started selling stickers, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but a lot of people bought stickers. We've sold thousands of stickers. And I like to say I'm really just a sticker salesman with a YouTube channel, because it's kind of true.
It's one of those things where clear that people value what you do and align with it enough to want to kind of advocate for it in the world, and just find any excuse to support you. So that's pretty cool that you've been able to make that work.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of discovered about stickers. Like, no one needs stickers. It's not like a life or death necessity, but it was a means for people that wanted to support the channel to create some kind of transaction. So we started stickers. We've done other merch. We have some shirts. Most recently, stem caps. Those sold pretty well, or are selling pretty well. So it's just a cool way for people that like the content on the channel to help support the channel.
And so we've talked about YouTube. We've talked about your Patreon. You also have a Discord.
Yeah, the Discord. Again, that was, one of my goals for the channel is, or one of the things a big need that I saw was people wanted to find other cyclists that had the same kind of party pace mindset, right? What I've discovered a couple years ago is that what really brings people together isn't a common interest. It's the common belief and value system around that interest, right? We all ride bikes, but triathlete is going to have different values than the fixed gear rider, than really hardcore endurance gravel athlete. So it wasn't enough to say, hey, we're about bikes, blah, 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 blah. It was, it's party pace. These are our values, and people wanted to find other people with those values and who ride like that. So instead of being the point of contact for everyone, I wanted people to really talk with each other. So I looked at different things like Slack, and ultimately tried out Discord. I think because it was free or more free, and and Patreon and Discord have a good synergy where some of the Patreon perks are kind of different roles in Discord. So that seemed like a natural fit. And at first, people got really excited. We had a couple 100 people sign on, and how it is, like with Slack or Discord, people are active at first and they kind of drop off. But now I feel like there's a really cool core group of people. And what I love seeing in the Discord, and it started to happen more this year, is other people within the Discord would find people within their area and they'd ride together. They do events together. Yeah. And that was so satisfying to see that I didn't have to be the only channel, that we had created this space where people could discover, other like-minded cyclists.
Yeah, I like to describe kind of, what we're calling social media, I think would be better reimagined as online tools for facilitating like generative offline connection and experience and exchange. And that's not the current social media paradigm. But it seems like you've created a space, and I feel that we've created a space with or really co-created spaces together with other values aligned people, where you can find that. You can find a place to get advice. You can find a place to to connect, to get a sense of belonging, to plan adventures and so on. And that's something that's a really great opportunity, I think, in the cycling space specifically, because there are a lot of people who gravitate for cycling in part for those reasons, whether it's wellness, whether it's utility, or whether it's, oftentimes it's, I moved to a new place, I want to make some friends. Right. There's something very deep about that need that cycling seems to satisfy for a lot of people, certainly myself. Yeah.
Discord's been really interesting for that. Like the more the Discord constantly impresses me, because there is such a high level of bike nerdery, but also respect amongst the people in our Discord. And I hope that's because the channel sets a certain tone, or I set a certain tone, but it's really, it's far less toxic than other like bike spaces I've seen on the internet. Like people, they're pretty good at self-policing, which is cool.
Yeah, there's the early members of any given community. The founders, yes, and then the early members really kind of set the tone for how the thing evolves, because it's just a set of norms and so on. And hopefully you have a certain value system that's very clear, and people who don't align with that, they're not attracted to the community in the first place. Not that they're not welcome,
right?
But like, this is not a space for acting out. This is a place for, for connecting.
Yeah. And like there are people in our Discord that are like way smarter or nerdier than I am. Like I'm constantly impressed at the level of knowledge that they share. But it is one of those things where at first I promoted the Discord a lot, but I'm kind of hesitant to now.
Okay.
Just because I've loved how the people in there have gelled. And for me, it's not about the quantity of members, but the quality of interaction. So I'd almost kind of, artificially keep it small until things really gel before, saying, hey, everybody, we have, although I'm doing it now, hey, everybody, we have a Discord.
We've been thinking much the same. Like up until now, the community has grown very slowly and organically, and largely through our invites or through us, and just talking about it on the podcast. And people will show up and like, hey, I heard the pod, decided to finally join here. And so, I fully agree with you that like quality over quantity. At the same time, I suspect that there are, orders of magnitude more people who could benefit from and contribute to these communities. And there are certain types of activities, for example, like coordinating group rides. Well, you need a critical mass of people in a given area.
Right.
And so those offline connections are really enabled by having, a bigger community. And so I think this is a conversation I would love to have with you. Maybe now is not the space, but figuring out like how scale can be created in a way that doesn't undermine the ethos that made the community so healthy in the first place.
Right. For me, I kind of see like a series of funnels. So YouTube is probably our largest funnel. It'll take, all people interested in cycling, boil it down to people that are interested in this idea of party pace. And for those that want to dig down further, there's a Patreon and then the Discord. But so in that, it's not intentional, but in that way I see it like, okay, YouTube's a big net, and the more you get invested in the channel and dig what it's about, then you'll go the extra step and slowly discover the Discord on your own. Which is
Well, I'm curious, what do you see as the limitations of the current kind of technology stack that you're using right now? And is there anything that you're looking at in terms of other tools to adopt or even migrate to going forward? Like what's on the horizon?
I think the biggest limitation is that it's not one thing. It's several things. It's YouTube, it's Patreon, it's the website, it's Discord. It's not like one. I don't sign into one thing and control everything. They don't all necessarily integrate smoothly, and it is like multiple steps for people to have like the full experience. And I don't know that there is an existing platform or app with a big enough base that does all things. So at the moment, I'm at the whim of using all these kind of widgets and piecemealing together a community.
Yeah. Well, and then a platform like YouTube, they take a pretty big cut. Of the value that you create.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like Patreon is going to start doing their own video, which I think is interesting because typically YouTube creators that have Patreon, they'll usually do an early release. So they'll set a YouTube video in private. Patreon viewers can view it first, and they turn it on to the rest of the world. But you're still using YouTube. But if you can just have that content live on Patreon, I think that'd be interesting move. I don't know if I have the bandwidth to do Patreon specific content, but it is something that I'm keeping tabs on.
It's one of the great challenges, and you can consider like YouTube is a web 2.0 company, and they have a platform and they gather both sides, the viewers and the content creators and ultimately the advertisers, but the viewers being the product. And you get to a certain critical mass, and YouTube is first and foremost arguably a search engine. And if that's where people are going to find content and get content recommended to them, it's hard not to be there.
Right.
But I think ultimately, like the paradigm that I hope for and that I see slowly emerging is one where content creators own their content and own the rights over that content and have access to means of distribution that are not so extractive, maybe, a couple of percent versus a 50%, and we could demonetize you and deplatform you at any time.
Yeah. That's definitely the dream. I mean, that's why, in kind of the, creative entrepreneur space, there's still an emphasis on email newsletter. I mean, that sounds like so Web 1.0, but it's one of the few pieces of content and like constant communication that you can actually control. That's not at the whim of an algorithm or, someone else's hands.
And it's one of the original open protocols of the internet. right? Any client can communicate with any other client versus, on Facebook, it's a walled garden. And if
Yeah.
you try to do something that they don't like on Facebook, or if you do something that is, really successful, well, they'll kick you off, or they'll, deprioritize you in the algorithm, or they'll just like create a copy of it and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One switch that has turned on in my head recently is, it used to be that my goal was, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to hit 100,000 subscribers and get this thing, and which is very nice. But after having achieved that, that is no longer the goal. It's to turn whatever, virtual community we have into IRL, into real life, and try to kind of translate that into real human interaction. YouTube is a facet of that journey, but it's no longer the end goal.
Yeah. I'm 100% with you there. And in fact, it was one of the major motivations for me reaching out for this conversation, because I see the good work that you do, and the quality of connection that you facilitate within your community. So bravo to you on that. How many people in your Patreon, by the way? Oh, sorry, not Patreon. I should say your Discord.
I don't know. I feel like it's over 1,500.
Okay, so similar scale.
Yeah. There's probably the most active group is definitely smaller, but it's a decent number, and I feel like a lot of people that sign on to Patreon do claim the Discord like benefit, and you can see them light up, which is cool.
Very cool. Have you done any events? Like, have you coordinated events? Have you gotten to meet any of the community members?
That was our plan before COVID.
Yeah, same. I was going to do a tour.
Yeah, we had it's funny, like the year that COVID happened, we had just started doing that. Like we did, we coordinated a series of art shows at bike shops. So I'd paint watercolors, and we'd have an art show at a local bike shop. Like we did Transit Cycles in Arizona, Golden Saddle in LA, Golden Pliers in Portland. Because I wanted to give like a focus to the event rather than people just drinking beer. So it's a fun way for people, fans of the channel, and people that want to do bikey things without just drinking beer could attend. And then the last one we did was in at Transit in Arizona, and that's when COVID blew up, and we're like, you got to pull the plug on this tour.
Are people able to buy your art or prints of your art? Because I've seen some of your watercolors and they're really cool. Like, I thought I was going to ask you at one point, can I make a t-shirt out of this?
Yeah, we've got a big cartel shop. Again, very disjointed. We're going to migrate to probably Shopify so it can live on the actual website next year. People can buy originals, which are expensive, but then they can also buy smaller postcards and prints, which the prints are it's like a giclée print on the watercolor paper, and it's about as close as you can get to an original without spending that much. And it's really high quality. So yeah, people can buy, there are options for people to purchase prints.
Yeah, it falls into that category of like feeling like a part of something, and getting the psychic income of supporting the content that you want to see in the world.
Yeah. I know your podcast listeners can't see it, but behind that veiled curtain there, that's our picking station, where we've got a bunch of shelving with stem caps and stickers and prints. And Laura,
oh, you're doing your own fulfillment.
Yeah. Well, Laura, I outsourced it to Laura. So,
speaking of Laura, how's Laura doing?
She's doing well. If you guys aren't familiar, she got diagnosed with breast cancer a little bit over a year ago, and that really threw a wrench in our plans. And so we had to navigate that. But she's on the other side of, all the major surgeries. She's kind of just taking a maintenance drug for the rest of the year, but she's doing well enough that she's starting to ride the bike again. Like, I think she's going to do another trainer session today, and hopefully get into some shape so we can do some actual riding in California.
Excellent. That's really great to hear. And I see like a lot of, even your email address is Russ and Laura. So, share a little bit about like what was her role in the genesis and kind of development of the channel, and what is that dynamic like, building something like this with a partner?
Yeah. So, we've been together for about 19 years. When we first met, neither of us were into bikes. I discovered,
Wow.
yeah, I know. I discovered bike commuting. And at the time we lived in Long Beach and she worked at Seal Beach. So the commute was like 3 miles. And then I got her into bike commuting. And then we both fell in love with bike touring. And it was then that we decided to, hey, maybe we could make a blog out of this. So it was definitely a joint venture. I've been very fortunate insofar as, I've been able to get, I don't want to say like get Laura into the same interest, but we come to things at the same time, or we appreciate the same things. So we both love bikes, and she's definitely an integral role to PLP. She does all the bookkeeping, the shipping fulfillment, the contracts. She handles all the like the logistical stuff that a lot of people don't see, but are crucial to making a living.
Yeah, it's one thing to be kind of the face of something, but as like my case, same deal, like with thesis. So little of what it takes to create the product and get it delivered is done by me, right? I contribute my small part and I convey a message and do product development and so on. But, I have team members who are managing the orders. There are factories, there are people working hard to actually produce the things. There are logistical companies that are getting the things to the right places and assembling them and QCing them and handling all of that. And so it's acknowledgement of that. I think it's
Yeah, we had a pretty early division of labor. Like we knew like what our strengths were. Like I'm definitely more of a creative, pie in the sky kind of person, and she's very grounded. So typically I'll bounce that idea off of her and she's like, that's dumb and you have no time to do that. Or like I'll know if something has legs if she thinks it's feasible. But we definitely fulfill, I think the two kind of the two personalities that's needed in the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that has been my experience as well. So really, really great to see how the two, like hear about how the two of you work together. And 19 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
So good on the two of you. So let's see. I mean, open-ended. What else would it be fun to dive into? What are you nerding out about these days?
I think a lot about where the holes are in cycling, in particular in cycling media. And I think that I still think like the non-competitive side of cycling is grossly underrepresented, and there's probably like a lot more people that are into that style of riding than is the sharp pointy end of racing. I feel like that's overrepresented because people that get hired at those media agencies or at those brands tend to be ex-racers, so it creates this echo chamber, right? And so I really still think of myself as trying to break the echo chamber, insert a different voice and speak for that the large group of people that are bike enthusiasts but don't ever see themselves necessarily pinning on the number. And I think I was trying to come up with a good analogy. I was describing it to a friend recently. I think there are like two types of people, right? There's people that kind of view life as a puzzle to be solved or like a competition to be won. And there's others that view life as, as a fine meal at a restaurant that's going to end, and your goal is to not eat the fastest, but to savor every bit. And I'm definitely on that latter part. And I feel like a lot of cycling media is, it views it primarily as a sport. So I'm just trying to broaden that message and reach people that feel left out. We've got a channel trailer, and I think the title is like Misfits Welcome, and that's who I'm trying to find.
I love your analogy there, and I resonate with both parts of it. Like, I definitely started off cycling ultra competitive. Like, I am your classic skinny, shade-legged white guy in Lycra who was out like trying to rip people's legs off, right? And I started off as I rode as a kid. I go on adventures and so on. But when I stopped doing competitive team sports, I was, believe it or not, a linebacker and a fullback in high school. About 30 pounds ago, and got into racing in part because I wanted the sense of belonging of being on a team, but also in part it was because I was good at it, and I was like, oh, here's a thing where I can prove myself. Right. And in fact, I really got into it because it's like, oh, I want to get to a really high level in something. And here's the thing that I have the greatest ability to get that in. So I was definitely fitting into the first category first. And now I am very much in the other category.
Right.
Like riding for fun, riding primarily for connection with, with nature, with other people and community, and ultimately with like myself, like the rolling meditation. So
yeah, and my stance is like, I'm not anti-racing or the competitive side by any means. I just think that's overrepresented. I'm just trying to give an alternative voice. By saying party pace is a thing doesn't necessarily mean racing's not a thing. It's not like pizza where there's only one slice to be shared. So,
well, let's talk like practically here too. It is, I believe, the bigger opportunity. Like putting aside like the ethos of it, I also very much align with at this stage in my life. I think it's this great vehicle for connection. But then also, like, for everyone who's racing or everyone who's like following the racing, there's 10 people who could benefit from the health and wellness and community and belonging and everything that comes with this activity that we so love.
I mean, if you think about, if you took all the people in the world that could potentially ride bikes, these are grandmothers, grandfathers, small children, and you filtered it down to, the small percentage that would race competitively, I find, maybe it's anecdotal. I think like the number of these non-competitive cyclists would vastly outnumber, the people that could do it at an elite level or even like a quasi-competitive level. And yet, that competitive end takes a lion's share of bicycling's imagination. Like a big eye opener is, during COVID, right? Huge bike boom, very little racing. We've been told this. I don't want to say it's a lie, but this kind of truism that cycling needs racing to sell bikes, and it absolutely doesn't.
There's a reason why we don't sponsor anyone. Other than we'll offer things sometimes to like community leaders or people who are doing good stuff to build community. I
mean, I think it's such an old model, like this sponsored athlete thinking that it'll draw bikes. I mean, to some extent it works, but also like there's other more kind of creative ways, more effective ways. It's 2021. It's not like 1950. We don't need like a celebrity endorsement from someone on Wheaties box to sell something.
I remember riding with a pretty accomplished European pro early in my very short career. He had retired, and I asked him about like sponsorship and equipment and so on. He's like, "Listen, you pay me enough, I'll ride a shopping cart." Like, that is the truth of it. Like, this is not the bikes are coming out of essentially the same facilities, right? They're all using the same components. Largely, they're parts hangers for SRAM and Shimano. All these aero claims about this and that. It's a lot of very selective, careful selection and representation of the data. Like, this is, this much more aero on the graph, but it's only showing this section of a graph that's this tall, things like this. But yeah, I'm 100% aligned with you on that one.
And I also think I think the consumer is a lot more savvy. I feel like it's not like when we were fed advertising in the 50s and you took everything at face value. People read reviews, they watch reviews, they do their own research. More people are being content creators, so they understand the ins and outs of messaging. And yet, like, it seems as if, bike advertising still kind of the same. It's not very sophisticated.
It's advertising. It's
right.
like, let me tell you how to think.
Right.
As opposed to, let me present some information and let you figure out what resonates with you.
Yeah. It's like looking at how different industries use YouTube, for example, I think is pretty telling. Like, a lot of brands still use YouTube as a showcase for their brand video. Whereas if you look at the camera industry, they send out stuff to everyday people. They give their impressions. They don't. Sony doesn't. I mean, they probably do product release videos, but it's not. They understand that that's not like the main driver to sales. Like, it's people talking about the product in real world situations, and normal people. They're not given cameras to Annie Leibovitz or James Nachtwey and
well, people that others can relate to.
Right.
And if you have, like, if you're searching on YouTube, like, you're searching for a particular, component or something like that, you don't, it doesn't matter. In fact, I tend to trust the reviews from smaller channels much more than I trust the ones from channels that have advertisers, right? Are depend on making the manufacturers happy in order to generate their income. Like, there's a profound conflict of interest that even if it's subconscious, that has to be influencing that content. Versus somebody who just spontaneously, like, this thing was so good I had to talk about it, or this thing is crap, or and I just had to talk about it, or like, I just wanted to create content because I thought it would be valuable to other people in the world, which is very much the dynamic, going back to community, that we see in the ridership, and it sounds like you're seeing in your Discord.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to what you said earlier about trust in reviews. That's definitely something I take super seriously on the channel. At this point, I've reviewed about 80 bikes, was not paid to review any of them. And the bikes I kept, I ended up buying, and that's kind of the promise I
Bravo.
I tell the viewer, I tell our Patreon community, because in my freelancing days, I did stuff for, Bicycle Times when they were still around, Momentum, Adventure Cycling. And, I was always kind of aware of the advertorial aspect of things. And I didn't want to participate. So when we started the YouTube channel, like, we get no sponsored money from the bike industry. Like, we don't get paid by Salsa, by, whoever. $0, I'd rather have the viewer, support the channel, and that's why we push the Patreon so much. Most recently, I've been buying more products, like small goods. There's to some extent we participate in that. We get review stuff, but then I still give my honest feedback on it. But more and more, I want to transition to like 100%, like buying everything, just because I feel like it lends more credibility. It's very difficult to do because as a channel, we don't make enough money to do that 100%. But where I can, I will, buy the product like everybody else and give our review. One of the channels that really inspired me is actually in the coffee industry. This guy, James Hoffman, who has like a massive following, I think 1 million subscribers. He'll compare these, $1,000 espresso machines, but he has a large enough Patreon where he can buy them all, review them, and then give it away on his Patreon. And that is what I aspire to, is to not be supported by the bike industry, buy everything, and then give it away on the Patreon.
It makes me think of like a much more organic form of what like Consumer Reports used to do. Right. And that was like the go-to kind of trusted source for reviews before, the internet era. I admire the hell out of that.
Yeah, and it's a long road. Like when I took the YouTube channel, when I started taking the YouTube channel seriously, I did the maths, right? I was like, okay, there's a handful of bike brands that would probably potentially be interested in supporting our content, but truthfully, they're going to give that money to the Radavist or bikepacking.com first. So, in my head, I was like, how can we turn this weakness into a strength? So I really leaned into it. I was like, okay, fine, we'll just take no money from the bike industry and really rely on the Patreon supporters and the sticker sales. It's a longer road because you don't get those big influxes of cash or right up front, but we can slowly grow the supporter base. I can't grow more brands that would be willing to support this. I can hopefully keep making more content to attract more viewers to support this. So that's the tactic we've chosen.
By the way, the Radavis was recently acquired by the Pros Closet.
Right.
Right. So, it's they do great content. And we've certainly benefited from their kindness in kind of taking our press releases and publishing and so on. But that it is hard. It is what you're doing is hard.
Yeah.
And with Craig, right? So we have Craig set up a Buy Me a Coffee, and that brings in a few $100s a month. This is not a moneymaker. All that money goes to Craig, by the way, and just offsets basic costs associated with not just like the software and so on is not a huge part of that, but you have to think about the amount of time that goes into scheduling and doing the interviews, and then the post-production work and promotion and social media and all this other stuff. And there is a degree to which the current Web 2.0 paradigm makes it hard it makes it harder than necessary, given the level of our technology, to support the content you want to see in the world. And one of the things that I'm seeing emerge that seems very hopeful is the advent of micropayments and things like this. And so hopefully those are things that we are looking to adopt in the next, even 6 months to a year, that hopefully will unlock more opportunities for people to support the content they want to see in the world in a way that is aligned with what they have. You don't have to sign up for $5 a month. You don't have to pay a membership fee. It's everything here is for free. If you value it, contribute to it. And here's some really easy ways to do so that don't have some company taking 10%, right, or 50 plus % in the case of YouTube.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely an aha moment where, shifting the focus from being 100% viewer supported as opposed to chasing that traditional model of, getting advertising from a bike brand or being a sponsored athlete or something. It's hard, but I think it's worthwhile, and it's ultimately proving the most sustainable.
Yeah. Well, of course, if there's anything that we can do, part of my motivation here was this is one way that I can support the content that I want to see in the world. So to the extent that we can collaborate to support what you do, please let us know. And with that, anything else? So we've been chatting for about 45 minutes here. Anything else that you think it would be fun to jump into before we open it up to questions from people who are listening in on the live stream?
I think we hit the big ones, the huge untapped well of the non-competitive cycling market. I know that we have an alternate channel called Alt Cycling, where it's a goofy video live stream with a bunch of other bike YouTube creators. And I saw recently that Ultra Romance adopted Alt Cycling for his Northeaster event. So now it's a thing, Alt Cycling. There you go.
I haven't seen this.
No?
Please send me a representative link to a video or something like that.
Yeah, if you just want to hear 4 bike YouTubers just complain about being a bike YouTuber,
very inside baseball.
Yeah. I think that's it. We can open it up to live stream questions if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so if you guys are in the live stream still, there's 111 of you. I'm breaking the fourth wall. Is it the fourth wall or the third wall of the podcast? If you have questions for either me or Randall.
Or feedback,
Yeah.
your own ideas and perspective on how
Yeah.
we can do things better.
Yeah. We're like, so putting on your bike industry hat, where do you think most brands what do you think most brands think of YouTube? Do they think it's like it's not as serious as like Pink Bike or whatever, or because I feel like as a creator, like most brands are still like, huh, what's YouTube?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm not really involved with. We take a very different approach. So I don't know how others view it. I do know, like, some of the things I see from big brands, it tends to be your classic like promotional video, or here's some highly paid athlete that, or some athlete we paid some money and sent a camera crew out and did some adventure thing that you can then live vicariously through or whatever.
Can I make a confession that I'm totally bored of that style of
Yeah.
content?
I suspect that you are not alone at all.
It reminds me of like was it like around 2012 when people were making artisanal everything and they had all these artisanal brand videos, and it just jumped the shark. And I feel like, the adventure bike video genre is getting to that point.
I mean, I'll say that, like, early on in thesis, there was definitely a pressure to engage in that. And, it never felt authentic. It never felt quite right. And at some point I was like, you know what, screw this. We don't need to do this. We have an existing base of riders. If we just take care of them, they'll tell their friends. And if we just do good in the world and show up as like credible and helpful, and make content that is of value to people and help people to get their needs met, and this is where the ridership and so on comes in, then we'll be taken care of as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's been kind of our approach.
Yeah, I've kind of hit that point too, where initially my goal was to grow the channel as big as possible, but after a certain point, it's if I can serve the people that are already subscribed better, that's actually all the viewers we would ever need. If all 125,000 joined Patreon, it would be amazing. Not that many do, yeah. But if like you said, focusing on the audience that you do have, giving them the content or products that they want, and making them happy, rather than like some elusive, unattainable goal of some magic number down the line.
It depends on what your goals are. Like, if your goals are to go big and get rich and whatever, then like do some big crowdfunding, pump and dump, whatever scheme, collect a bunch of money and then bail or whatever. But if your goal is to, do good in the world, then it requires a slower, more intentional approach. And maybe it doesn't become as monetizable, but ultimately the psychic income is worth a lot more.
Yeah. I saw an interesting study that came out about YouTube creators, and, the largest niche of creators where they're actually doing this full time is in the education space. So educating about the topic, and that makes sense, right? Yeah. Because people go to YouTube to learn things, to discover new things. And, I think to last as a creator, you really do have to have a service mindset. Like, what is that people want to know about? What problem can I solve? There's very few creators that can just do their weird shit and be successful. Like the PewDiePies of the world, like being like solely personality based and not serving some kind of educational, and
I don't envy, I don't envy the need, the attention seeking drive that often drives some of that content. Like, I'm okay to have a smaller community of people that are more ethos aligned.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some of the comments that we're seeing in here, because there's a bunch of good ones.
Anything jumping out to you?
So I'm taking it from the top. So T Shen, oh, this is very kind. The ridership is a great example of what online community can be: helpful, focused, friendly, zero snark, unless you guys edit it out. We don't edit it out. There have been 2 instances where I have moderated, and it's always been like starting a dialogue with the person and about like, hey, this comes off in this way, and what do you think about taking it down, and so on. And actually some of those people have gone on to be really great contributors to the community. So no, it's like it's a really, that's just the values that the type of people that it attracts have those values. So thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, like our Discord is similar. I think I've only in the history of the Discord had to ban 2 people, and they were actively, it was clear that they were not going to contribute in a positive way. But for the most part, everyone's, treats everyone pretty well.
So what are you seeing in there?
Let's see. Yeah, guys, if you guys have any questions for either of us or want us to riff on the topic, let us know.
A lot of love in here. Here's another one. I love the pathless pedaled approach. Such a breath of fresh air in the midst of all the leg shaven GNC cycling performance weight weenies.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, I used to be one of those people. Be kind. Be kind. We're just dealing with our insecurity.
Yeah, I've been kind of noodling through a video, and I think the title is going to be something like "Why Fast Doesn't Matter" or "Why Fast is Overrated." Because this is my take on it. I'll give you guys a sneak peek on the video. Is typically, let's say we take the status quo lens of a bike, it's always going to be viewed through like a racing perspective, right? So the attributes of a bike that are going to be praised are, lightweight, aerodynamics, crisp shifting. But that assumes if you're racing. And I'd say that that's kind of the wrong perspective. Instead of asking, what's the fastest, we should be asking what's the most efficient for the task. So if you've got, a mom with 2 kids, is a aero lightweight bike going to be the most efficient for the task? No. It's going to be a cargo bike. Or if you have a racer and you give them a cargo bike, is it the most efficient for the task? No. But, stepping back and asking, okay, what is the task that we're talking about? It is one lens to view bicycling and not the only lens.
Well, I tend to distill things down to like, first principles, in the sense of like, well, what is the deeper goal? Like, is it to be fast, or is it to like be able to keep up with the people you want to ride with, or is it like some need to be recognized as fast, like some need for esteem or whatever, in which case like there are other ways to get that met. And a bicycle is a vehicle, so it's ultimately, I think, about what is the experience,
right?
And really focusing on the experience, which means a bike that can do a lot of things, and is very versatile, a bike that holds up and doesn't hold you back, and things of this sort.
Yeah,
is accessible.
Question, Arbalest, how big is the European part of the PLP community? Looking at our analytics and where we ship product, it's a big part. We ship a lot of stickers to the UK, a lot of stem caps and stuff to Germany, Finland. Although not part of Europe, like Australia and New Zealand was a big purchaser of stickers until recently, because the U.S. Postal Service stopped delivering there. And for us to send something to New Zealand or Australia, it has to go by UPS, and it's $30, regardless if it's like a stem cap or a sticker. So that really sucked. How about in the ridership? Do you guys have a big European contingent?
We're probably predominantly North America. I haven't looked at the metrics on that, to be honest. I haven't followed that super closely, but we do have a few people kind of interspersed around the world, and even a few who've like taken upon themselves to try to recruit local riders so that they can have a critical mass in their area. But it's definitely early days, and definitely quite US focused, with some density in the Bay Area for obvious reasons, the Front Range. I've been focusing on New England for obvious reasons of late, and things like this. So yeah.
I know in our Discord someone shared with me a story that they were originally from New York, moved to Berlin, and was able to find someone else on the Discord in Berlin, and now they've become fast.
Oh, that's great.
Which is pretty cool.
Isn't that the dream? Like, isn't it the dream? Like, or you're traveling, just sign up for that channel, make some friends, go have an experience. I have an idea that I'm talking to our technology partner on, about like a friend B&B. where you'd be able to earn like a stay credit that is just like a token where like, hey, I'm going to be in Montana, and you'd be able to like publish, I have a room available, and then I would apply, and you'd be able to accept or deny. And if you accept, I have a one deficit and you have a one credit,
Right.
and then I can, share my space to somebody who's coming into town and like have that really facilitate community. Obviously this is maybe more of a post-COVID idea.
Right.
But it does speak to the possibilities once you have a certain critical mass. So that's a really great anecdote that you got there.
Yeah, I've been thinking about looking at the the RCC, the Rafa Cycling Club, offers, and trying to see if what we could do virtually to our membership, kind of adopt some of those things. I don't know what all they offer because I'm not part of any of them, but I've been looking at other membership models in the cycling space, and okay, if you stripped away all the competitiveness, like where could we plug in?
Let's continue the conversation offline, because I think there's a very rich thread there. And in fact, I know that there are some people in the ridership also who work in the space that might have something to contribute. I see a comment from Richard Shelmerdine. This is a duplicating question I posed in the ridership, but what thoughts do you have on organizing group rides with respect to liability and lawsuits?
I'll pop that. So I'll let you take that one first.
So yeah, this is something that like is a big issue for shops. And I used to join a Rafa ride, and so it wasn't an official Rafa ride, but we would meet at Rafa, and it had to be made very clear that this was not a Rafa ride. As a company, we've and with the podcast, we've had some group rides and so on, and we live in a litigious culture. And it is very expensive to defend oneself, and like it's an unfortunate but very cheap to sue, and it's an unfortunate paradigm. You definitely want to be mindful of who you have joining is a big thing, and the values there. Waivers can be really helpful. Actually, one of the things that we are, again, I've mentioned kind of some technology, some advising / consulting that I'm doing for a technology partner, looking at how to have a digital platform where you would have, say, an identity, and on this identity, you could have everything from, an attestation that you're vaccinated to, a waiver that you sign to attend a particular event. And then having the event coordination, whether it be, hey, Russ, let's meet up for a group ride, all the way to a 2,000 person gravel event, be able to be coordinated on the same platform with the waivers and payments and everything else handled in one place. Right now, a lot of that is disjointed or really expensive, in the same way that, say, Patreon takes a substantial cut, or YouTube takes a substantial cut. So greater, that it's definitely a concern, and the deeper your pockets, the bigger the concern it is, or the deeper your pockets are perceived to be, the bigger of a problem it is. And there are solutions in the pipe, and it takes a critical mass of people in the types of communities where those are being incubated in order for these to come to fruition.
Yeah, that's definitely a sticky topic. Like Laura and I have toyed around with the idea of having like either an event, like an overnight event at the base camp, and looping gravel rides or something, or this winter meeting up with folks and doing rides to our favorite places. Definitely the the potential litigious nature has turned us off, as well as the COVIDs. So we're still kind of navigating those waters.
So you mentioned that you're going to be in SoCal coming up,
Correct.
yeah? So Craig Dalton, founder of the Gravel Ride podcast, also spends a good amount of time in SoCal, and my colleague Sam Jackson is in SoCal too. So maybe we could make something happen at some point. I don't know. If there's demand out there, let us know, and we'll coordinate something.
Yeah. Right now we're trying to figure out all, it's going to be a big content trip basically, as well as vacation. So definitely looking for opportunities to make some interesting videos.
There's also the I don't know if you're familiar with the gravel steel community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Dave Malwitz,
San Diego,
really,
yeah.
it's a great group of people. I've been down there and done group rides with like 100+ people, which is pretty astonishing.
Yeah.
And Dave's become a good friend over the years. Another one of these people who, he doesn't make money off of it. He's spending money on it, but he just values community, he values the connection and the creative outlet that the space provides.
Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions in the live YouTube chat? There's still 115 of you sticking around, which is pretty awesome for a Monday. You didn't think we'd get this many people, did you?
No, and I'm actually recognizing, unless they're also following your channels, we have quite a few people that I recognize from the ridership, and I just posted that several hours ago. So
yeah, I find that
cool.
Promoting a live stream ahead of time doesn't make too much of a difference unless it's like a super well-known personality. Otherwise, like, people are gonna be on the live stream when it's convenient. So I tend not to sweat the live stream promotion too much. YouTube does help out in that, like, at a few minute intervals before it lets all the subscribers know that it's going to happen. So that's the best thing it could do.
So Rick Urbanowski has thrown in a bunch of comical questions, including, Russ, why do you hate beer? And Randall, have you ever successfully ripped a leg off?
There you go. So I don't hate beer. I just like whiskey more. It's like beer concentrate and less puffy. Like, when I drink beer now, I just get kind of bloated feeling. So I'd rather have whiskey. I'll let you take the rip the leg off question.
I don't like beer either.
No,
no. Yeah,
it's almost like a sacrilege in the bike industry.
Yeah, alcohol generally isn't my chemical.
Yeah.
I'll have I'll have a glass of wine here and there, and I have not actually ripped legs off. It is a figure of speech. I should be more careful with my vocabulary. But what else do we have here? Crispy says, I'd like to see a PLP and gravel ride podcast, bike packing or bike fishing adventure video so I can live through your videos. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
I'll come meet you someplace warm.
Yeah. If you come to the West Coast, or the Rocky Mountain West, we can coordinate. Yeah, definitely looking forward to more outside videos this winter. It's just been such a hard year. So Jen Harrington asks, do you know percentage of women on the channel? That's a good question. I can tell a little bit by analytics. At least on the YouTube channel, it's probably less than 5%.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I know it's less than 5%. I think a lot of that has to do with, I think when you have a male presenter on the channel, it's just how things are going to shake out. I think our Patreon it's not parity, but there are a lot of women that support on Patreon and very few that participate on the Discord. How about for you guys?
I don't know about the pod. I don't, Craig manages all the analytics there. But the ridership, if I had to guess, it's probably on the order of maybe 10% or so, which is still quite low.
Yeah.
Maybe for some of the same reasons you cited there. I've actually had some conversations, including with Monica Garrison over at Black Girls Do Bike. I don't know if you've seen the work that she's done, but really just like bringing people together, creating events and content that make cycling more accessible to a community that you just don't see very well represented, and it begs the question why. And one of the things that I've been quite curious about is what role can I play in making cycling more accessible? And there's some kind of easy things to do, which is one, engaging, but then two, figuring out what the needs are that can be served.
Right.
But at the same time, it is good to see that there are those communities being created that serve people who maybe either don't find things like PLP or the ridership, or maybe aren't quite clear if it's for them or not. I will say this: we want you with us.
Right.
And we want your feedback. We want your ideas. And ultimately, we my personal goal is for like the ridership to become something much bigger, which I don't control. So maybe it has a board. It has a decentralized governance structure. So we're looking at like DAOs and decentralized autonomous organizations built on blockchains and things like that. It's a potential structure going forward to allow people to help decide the direction. And I think that sense of, obviously first representation, but then ultimately a sense of ownership in co-creation, I think hopefully will help to kind of merge these communities so that they can join together.
Yeah. Cool. Do you think you're the... Let's see. Do you think reviewing so many bike products discourages people from riding without specialized bike? To some extent, yes. In a sense of, if I don't have these bags, I can't go bike packing. Yeah, I do think that, when people watch reviews, I don't intend for people to buy them. They're just usually things I'm really interested in. But for some people, there's this feeling of like, oh, I need that thing or else I can't do this thing. Maybe I should try to communicate better that you should, bike or go bike packing with what you have and don't worry about all the small stuff.
Yeah, people were bike packing before there was bike packing gear, just like people were gravel riding before there were gravel bikes.
Yeah. I do find like there's this one camera creator or camera YouTuber I watch, and he had this interesting video talking about the dark side of tech YouTube. And the purpose of the video was he was, feeling overwhelmed because he's getting sent all this stuff. And, he himself is like a minimalist by nature, but he has to play with all this stuff and, seemingly promote it. And he feels bad when people feel bad that they don't have the same stuff. And that really resonated with me from the bike perspective, because there's a few things I truly really like, and they're fairly attainable. Like I love friction shifting, I love flat pedals, but I do dabble with all the latest gadgets just because I have an interest in them, but not necessarily because I want people to buy them. Like I never, I try not to frame my reviews as like, you must absolutely buy this thing. It's just this is what I think about it. It's kind of cool. You might like it. There's very few things where I've said, this is, you should buy this. So I was thinking of doing a video like that, because I have boxes of lots of things, which which is overwhelming.
I often in conversations will tell people, actually, you don't need this. Like, we offer a carbon rail saddle option. It saves 55 grams for $49. And unless you have too much money and you're trying to squeeze every gram out, you don't need this. This is not going to affect in any way your experience. Maybe that one's a little bit more obvious, but the same applies to a lot of gear, hyper specialized, non-versatile gear that we're told, you have to have in order to engage in this experience.
Yeah, I've started saying no to lots of things, and there's some things that I just don't review anymore because I don't feel like it can add anything meaningful to the conversation, or I just don't use it. Like I actually don't, like I've said no to so many bike packing bags. It's like I don't like the poop bag or the sausage roll. It's just not my style. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. You can buy them if you want, but I wouldn't personally use them. I think they're all about the same.
Yep.
And yeah, so like no more bike packing bags on the channel. No more. I'm not reviewing carbon wheels anymore, just because I can't add anything meaningful to it. I can say that they're light and they feel fast, but I don't have the scientific background to do any testing or something. So unless someone wants just like a purely anecdotal experiential review, I'm not gonna review products where like I can't add to I can't add to the knowledge base.
So you're saying I shouldn't send you any new fancy carbon wheels?
You could, but I won't review it.
A man of integrity.
But you know what I mean? It's like there's like I'm not an engineer. I could read the press copy and make it sound convincing, but like on a day-to-day basis, unless like the wheel like just shatters as I'm riding to, there's nothing meaningful I could add to the conversation.
I actually believe that is generally the case, and most wheels are a prime example of a tremendous amount of marketing bullshit.
I mean, I think
there are differences. There are fundamental differences, but those aren't what's being marketed. Like the basics of good wheel design. Maybe I'll do an episode on this at some point, but like, they are what they are.
Yeah. Like I've been, given the opportunity to review like, $3,000 wheels, $2,000 wheels. Like I just can't do it. Like I can't add anything to, I'm not willing to read your press release.
So I see a comment here from Jeffrey Fritz. He says, I am a cancer survivor and was recently thinking about Laura. Glad to hear she was winning the battle. Thank you for your share, Jeffrey. And yeah, I resonate with that fully.
Yeah.
So.
It is you hear, cancer battle, and it is an extended campaign. It is a war of attrition, between your body and the disease. There's no like quick in and out, and there's a lot of collateral damage in the process.
Yeah.
Could
you share your Discord link?
Yes, I will put that in the description after the live stream. I think like I have to create a new invite or something. I think I made one video about the Discord channel like months ago, and I haven't promoted it on the YouTube channel since. But yeah, I'll put the invite in the description below.
Jordan Kwan says, Jacobs, that's me. The ridership merch. We want to do a jersey. It's in the works. We just have not had the bandwidth to focus on it, but expect one for next riding season. So if you want a ridership jersey, we'll get that done, and we'll probably put it out to the community to provide input on the design and so on.
Yeah, we've been looking at other products that we could sell beyond just stickers. And stem caps. Ideally, I'd like to help design the bag. It would be fun to do a collaboration on a bike. I do have an idea for like a hard good, which solves a very specific problem, but I don't know if it's sexy enough for people to invest in it. But we're constantly thinking of ideas of what's a bike product that we could present that we'd feel good about. That's hopefully new, and but it's tricky.
If you ever need guidance on the manufacturing side of things, it's a thing that I've done. We've talked about.
Yeah, because we're the weird place where we have an audience, but not that many products to sell, as opposed to having a product and having no audience. So it's kind of like this weird inverse problem.
Yeah.
So.
Looking through here, a lot of comments here, and a lot of just not calling most of them out because most of them are just like kind words. Yeah. And I just want to say really, really appreciated.
Yeah.
What else do we have here?
We've got 106 people. Not seeing any question really jump out, so maybe we should start taking it home, and then we can talk offline a little bit more if you want.
Sounds good. And I'm curious, and provide, I'd encourage folks to provide this feedback either in, if you're a member of the ridership or if you're a member of, PLP's Discord. Do you see a place for, say, a more interactive forum where we would create like a video conference, right? And maybe it's not for outside consumption, but it's more just a way for us to communicate. And it's not about, two people having a conversation and others typing in questions, but really more like I mean, I would view myself more in that circumstance as a facilitator, and facilitating connection and exchange between people. If folks think that's a good idea, it's been something that Craig and I have talked about in the past.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
we can
something like
collab on.
Yeah, it's something Laura and I have like talked about too. It'd be fun to do like a alt bike summit where you have like Grant Peterson from Rivendell there, maybe Jan Hein, Anton Krapicka, just like interesting personalities, and have it be like a interactive video conference. But it's not going to happen this winter. I can guarantee that.
Let's say intention set.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think I'm going to take us home. Any last things you want people to know about the ridership or anything else you're working on?
Yeah. So the podcast is the Gravel Ride Podcast. There's a bunch of great content around. I think that probably the most valuable content for a lot of people, especially newbies, would be some of our, Bike Fit 101 and, 5 skills that every gravel rider should know and things like this. We really try to cater to a beginner audience, as well as, going deep nerd into the esoterics of competitive cycling with event organizers and athletes and things like that. Definitely more Craig's domain on that regard too. The ridership, theridership.com is where you can go to get a link to sign up. We also bought a Ride with GPS account for the community. And so by joining, you get access to that free Ride with GPS account that we acquired. And we do have good things that are happening there. Russ is in there too. Not an super active member, but he does chime in when people tag him. And, Russ, obviously you have your own stuff going on there too. And so, yeah, that's how you find us. And then we do have some, with Thesis and other commercial projects that I'm involved in, we have some interesting things in the pipe, but, I'll be ready to talk about those probably, Q1 of 2022.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to take us home. Randall, thanks for being an awesome guest once again. Definitely check out the ridership, Thesis Bikes, and subscribe to the Gravel Rides podcast. It's probably on Apple Podcasts and wherever else you can find podcasts, I'm assuming. Yes. Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with us for an hour and 20 minutes. There's 111 of you on this Monday morning. You should get back to work and like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Quick housekeeping. Since Laura and I are going to be taking off, we're going to be closing our shop early. So like December 12th is going to be the last day we'll be taking orders. So if you want a gravel specific sticker, Party Pace stem cap, prints, sign those, then definitely buy it sooner than later. Because we're going to be gone and have a vacation. So thank you, everybody. And as always, keep this